Many member states are preparing to tighten their migration policies, and Brussels is in line with this new reality. The EU summit this week will be the place to discuss the details of how.
The first asylum seekers from Italy that will have their applications processed in Albania arrived via ship to the Albanian port of Schengen. The ship carried 16 men who were rescued at sea after departing from Libya. The men will undergo health screening and identification procedures and will then be transferred to a camp in Jadr, a few kilometers away from the port. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni formally opened the two centers on Friday, where Italy plans to process thousands of asylum seekers. Although the center in Jadr has the capacity for 3,000 migrants, it will start with 400 and increase to 880 in a few weeks. The centers will only house adult men. Families will not be separated, and women, children, and vulnerable people will be accommodated in Italy.
Member states seem to be further tightening their migration policies. The subject is high on the agenda of the European Council. In a letter to capitals, Ursula von der Leyen proposed to speed up returns and open detention centers in third countries. The Commission President is thus in line with the request of 15 member states to transfer asylum seekers to safe third countries. 17 countries also called for an accelerated expulsion of foreign nationals whose asylum application is rejected.
With the return hubs, there's a key question is whether the EU member states will find willing partners in order to establish those return hubs, and more than that, also to figure out ways to get countries of origin and transit to comply in terms of readmission.
In France, the new interior minister, who has made immigration his priority, wants to regularize undocumented migrants, but in small numbers and gradually. In Poland, Donald Tusk is considering temporarily and partially suspending the right of asylum to combat illegal immigration. Russia and Belarus are accused of orchestrating the influx of migrants using the Polish border to destabilize the EU as a hybrid attack. Warsaw believes migrants are weaponized in this way. On the other hand, fundamental EU values are at stake.
But then when it comes to justice, home affairs, migration, this is extremely problematic. The right to asylum is a fundamental right that cannot be suspended even in times of politically declared crisis. It is protected under EU law, under international law, but also by the Polish constitution, which shows that this is not a migration issue alone, but it's a broader rule of law issue.
While Hungary or Italy have been marginalized in the past for their hardline migration policies, rest of the member states now also seem to be converging in this direction.
President of the European Commission has endorsed return hubs outside of the European Union for rejected asylum seekers. Ursula von der Leyen sent a 7-page letter to EU leaders on Monday outlining several proposals to curb the number of asylum applications, including the controversial return hubs.
The letter is very clear on what are considered the priority areas for action, but now, of course, it is for the leaders to discuss the way forward based on the letter that the President has sent.
In the letter, von der Leyen said the EU will be able to learn lessons from the criticised Italy-Albania asylum processing deal. She previously described the offshore processing as out-of-the-box thinking, but humanitarian organisations fear it may set a dangerous precedent.
L'Italia ha dato il buon esempio con la sottoscrizione del protocollo Italia-Albania per processare in territorio albanese, ma sotto giurisdizione italiana ed europea, le richieste di asilo. È una strada nuova, coraggiosa, inedita, ma che rispecchia perfettamente lo spirito europeo.
In the letter, von der Leyen also pushed for designating safe third countries at an EU level. This would speed up deportations and avoid disagreements between member states. It comes ahead of a two-day summit in Brussels where migration is set to dominate talks.
The Spanish government is considering setting up an emergency reception centre for migrants at a disused airport south of Madrid. The proposal was met with condemnation from the town's mayor.
De un centro que es un auténtico campo de concentración para migrantes, en lugar que no reúne las mínimas condiciones humanitarias para atender a esas personas.
UN Refugee Agency data shows that roughly 43,000 people immigrated to Spain in the last year by sea.
Desde el Gobierno de España se estudia cientos de emplazamientos, como ha pasado ahora con el aeropuerto de Ciudad Real. Por cierto, quiero recordar que es un aeropuerto 100% privado.
The announcement coincides with a controversial offshore migrant processing centre in Albania opening its doors and processing the first round of migrants rescued at sea by Italian ships. Recently appointed NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte reaffirmed the alliance is ready to protect its territory and make further investments in its defence. He said NATO stands ready to confront any enemy and was ready to do whatever is necessary against future attacks. Rutte also stated that the alliance will continue its support for Ukraine against Russia following their full-scale invasion as a top priority.
The majority of Montenegro's population still identifies as Montenegrin, about 41%, according to the country's latest census results revealed on Tuesday. This is a decrease from the country's last census held in 2011, when 45% identified as such. The latest census was held in December last year and shows a 4% increase in those who identify as Serbs compared to the last census, now sitting at 33%. The small Balkan country's ethnic makeup has long been a sensitive issue, as census results often play an important political role in the region. Montenegro was the last state to split from former Yugoslavia, separating from Serbia in 2006. Census results continue to have influence on both pro-Serbian and pro-Montenegrin political goals. Moldovans will vote twice on Sunday, first in the country's presidential election and then in a long-anticipated referendum on EU membership. Around 5.6 million ballots were printed on Tuesday for the election and referendum. For the first time, they will not only be available in Romanian, but also in 5 languages of ethnic minorities: Russian, Ukrainian, Gagauz, Bulgarian, and Romani. The outcome of the referendum will determine whether EU accession will be a constitutional goal. A yes could lead to further tensions between the pro-Western leadership and the Moscow-leaning breakaway region of Transnistria in the country's east, where pro-Russian separatists rule. Incumbent President Maia Sandu, a vocal supporter of Moldova's EU membership, is leading the presidential race according to recent polls, as well as a yes outcome in the referendum.
Sweden's gang violence has become so severe that its homicide rate linked to gang warfare is now one of the highest in Europe. Journalists spoke with a young man who wishes to remain anonymous. After starting as a drug dealer, he now commits other crimes advertised on encrypted messaging systems.
Till exempel Malmö, att spränga port 30 000, sen här döda 800 000 i Malmö. Stockholm 500, Norrköping 500. I Malmö, det är större människor och det är människor som är kapabla till att göra saker tillbaka mot en. Jag har aldrig skadat, jag har aldrig dödat, det har jag gjort på många. Ja.
Criminals have turned to minors who face the prospect of juvenile justice rather than life sentences in the adult system for contract killings.
Alltså man rekryterar barn ju för att de inte tillräckligt klara i huvudet för att tänka vad som är rätt och fel i den åldern. Och då är det enkelt att manipulera dem med pengar eller annat. Till exempel man köper dem något klädplagg i början. Då de tänker jag har ändå varit snäll och ställt upp för mig. Det är så sånt börjar. Sen fortsätter det bara.
Escalating gang violence is fueled by arms and drug trafficking which flood Sweden's major ports. Since 2013, the number of fatal shootings in the country has more than doubled, according to official statistics. Much of the violence takes place in larger cities but has begun to spread to smaller towns. The 2024 Lumiere Festival in Lyon has kicked off, bringing together iconic stars to celebrate the art of cinema with restored classics and retrospectives. Euronews Culture caught up with several A-listers attendees to ask what movie first inspired them to pursue a career in filmmaking.
Il y a certainement mon film préféré qui est le Chantons sous la pluie, qui est vraiment un film de grand spectacle, tant dans sa Panavision que son Technicolor et les chorégraphies et la musique.
C'était Bébert et l'omnibus qui m'avait fasciné parce que j'étais un enfant et cet enfant qui faisait un peu les 400 coups m'avait vraiment donné, c'était la magie du cinéma, c'est la première fois que ça m'a vraiment atteint.
C'est un film qui représente le patrimoine parce que c'est la Dolce Vita. Voilà.
Now in its 16th edition, the festival celebrates the rich history of cinema and offers a program that blends restored classics and tributes to iconic film stars.